Hi, my name is Catherine. I am your instructor for this i.t.i.l version 4 training. This is the first video of the 26 video series. Subscribe our channel and press the bell icon to get the alert of the upcoming videos. Let's begin with the overall image of the course. Let me give you an idea about the contents that we will discuss during the videos. We will begin with the short introduction in the first section, where I will give you some idea about the training material, about the exam, about the number of questions for each chapter that you should expect in the exam, tips and advice for making sure that you have as many chances as possible to pass the exam. Then we will move to the next section, where we will cover some key concepts related to service management, so that you have the proper vocabulary before we go on. In sections 3 and 4 we will explore together the i.t.i.l guiding principles, which is by the way something new, which was not there in the previous versions. I will try to give you an idea about the i.t.i.l guiding principles and how they should be applied together whenever we need to plan or whenever we need to change anything in the organization. In section 5 we will discuss another important concept, which is 4 dimensions of service management. I will give you an example so that you can understand how to apply this concept. In section number 6, we will discuss the idea of having a service value system and the component of the service value system. Section 7 is dedicated to the concept of the service value chain, and I will present each activity in the value chain, and also how to combine these activities in order to create a value stream to solve particular business scenarios. Section 8, 9 and 10 are dedicated to the i.t.i.l practices. There are a number of 34 practices in total, but we will cover only the ones which are required for the foundation exams. So we will not discuss about all the i.t.i.l practices, but only the ones which you need to know for the foundation exam. I will give you sufficient examples so that you understand the purpose of each practice and how it should be applied in which situation, how they interact with each other, and so on. The last section will contain the course summary. Basically, a recap of all that we would discuss. Also, a short discussion about the next steps. What you can do next after the foundation. What other courses you can attend, and what other certificates you can apply for. So that will be the content of the videos. Let me discuss the prerequisites. What you need to have before you go through the videos. As you can see, this course is targeted at a broad audience. Although it is marketed as an IT topic, you will probably notice during the videos that most of the concepts we discuss here are also applicable in most of the areas. They not only IT specific, but I would also say they are more service specific. So if you want to work in the service industry, or if you already work in the service industry, and you want to improve your customer experience, if you want to deliver better service, and you want to be more efficient, then i.t.i.l could be very useful. It will be very interesting to find out the things contained by the framework. It does not require any technical knowledge or specific experience as a prerequisite. Of course it's useful, but I will try to give you examples which are not technical, because everybody can understand the concepts in i.t.i.l. So you should not expect any rocket science, any difficult to understand concept. That's why I am going to translate into a very simple language, using a very simple example, so that you can better understand the concepts that we have here. Minimum experience of working for a service provider organization is recommended, but it is not mandatory. Which means if you have previously working in a service organization, providing services, not necessary IT services, it will definitely help, because you will recognize some of the activities in i.t.i.l. Obviously, because the videos are in English, having good English language skills are essential, so that you can understand my example. You can understand the concept. You should know that when you register for the exam you will get the option to register in more languages. so you can choose the most convenient option for taking the exam. However, because the videos are in English, I will suggest taking English-based exam. Because that way all discussion in my presentation will be helpful in the exam. What about the objective of this course? What am I trying to teach you? What am I trying to deliver here? First of all, I want to make sure that you will get a good understanding of the basic vocabulary concerning ITIL. So I will try to present all the important topics and give you all the definitions. Sometimes I will give you additional examples, so I am sure that you actually understand the concept. So you can use them in a normal conversation, and you can understand the exam questions. We will have to go through each of the sections, each of the topics that we need to cover. Which are the guiding principles of the 4 dimensions, the idea of the service value system, the value chain, and the ITIL practices. I will try to allocate the time depending on how many questions you will get in the exam from each of these chapters. For example, when we discuss the service value system, the discussion will be pretty quick, pretty short, because in the actual exam you will only have one question regarding the service value system. So I am trying to maximize the value that you get out of these videos by focusing on the most important topics in the exam. Also, I will give you some tips and advice which help you to score most in the exam. So let's get started. We will begin with the introduction. What exactly is ITIL or ITIL? It doesn't really matter how to pronounce it. The acronym stands for Information Technology Infrastructure Library. It is the most popular IT service management framework right now. What does it exactly mean? It can be used as a guideline, as an operating model for the organization that wishes to improve the way they deliver the services to their customers. It's basically a collection of the best practices coming out of the experience of the large companies who faced different problems and found a particular solution, which have now become part of the framework, part of this library of advice. What is nice about it is, it can be applied to types of organizations in different industries. Whenever you are providing IT services, whether you are in the bank or in a telecom company, you can still use the ITIL guidance. It works for small companies and for very large corporations. It provides an end-to-end operating model, which is something you can start building upon. It's not perfect because you need to adapt if you need to customize it for your particular organization. But it is a very good starting point because you start with something that has been tested, it works, some practice. It covers the entire life of the particular IT service, starting with the creation, delivery, and improvement of the delivery service. So in that way, it is a very useful resource for many companies. It has a login history behind it. ITIL has been with us since the 80s when it was published in the UK in the 1980s. It was a collection of 50 books. At that time many companies were already doing IT. But there was a lack of common vocabulary, of a common dictionary. For example, you would encounter different people in different companies using the same terms, but with different meanings. For example, everyone talked about incidents and changes, but they meant different things. There was a huge need for standardization, or a common dictionary. This is how it all started. In the meantime, it became popular. And it became popular across the world, and not the only UK, but it was given international adoption. So it keeps up with the evolution of the industries and the methodologies. The team behind it decided to publish the next version, which was the version 2. Much more simplified than the previous one, and it also became much more popular. It was adopted worldwide. Later it evolved into version 3, which was published in 2007, and later revised in 2011. That is by far the most popular version on ITIL. It emphasized more of a connection between the IT provider and the customer, putting more focus on the value that the customer should receive. Whereas the previous versions talked more about the components of IT. This time the version 3 was the first one to introduce the idea that in the end, it doesn't matter how you provide the service. What's important is the customer experience at the receiving end of the service. So it is important to deliver the value. So it allows for better business integration. In the latest years, you have probably noticed the introduction of the new methodology, as we tend to use more and more of the agile approach to the projects. We talk more about DevOps, Lean and similar methodologies. So the team of volunteers behind i.t.i.l realized that the content has to be maintained, and in order to keep up with the evolution they decided to publish the next version. This was just released at the beginning of 2019. It's probably not going to be the last one. This is the latest version that we have right now. Why is this framework so popular at the moment? What would be the advantages that a company could have by implementing the guidelines in i.t.i.l? First of all, instead of starting from scratch, you learn from the experience of others. You apply something which works. It also helps you build a better model. Optimize your activity. Identify any wasteful, unnecessary things you are doing and eliminate them in order to optimize. It also allows IT companies to better position themselves towards the business customers. Help them create the proper image that they bring value to the organization. Enable them to be perceived in a positive way by the organization. Not just to spend money in different technologies, but something that brings value, that can be used for a competitive advantage. Something that can be considered as the business enablers. That's one important thing in i.t.i.l. It also enables the management to make better decisions regarding risk, to decide always based on the figures and facts. Think about the consequences of the action. It can improve the quality of services. It can improve the customer satisfaction, because it has a lot of focus on the customer experience. The way customers interact with our services. It can also give you a way to adapt faster. To provide faster responses to the need for change. You have probably seen that in the latest years. Everything is moving faster and faster. The speed is increasing everywhere. Everybody is looking to shorten the time to market. Normally the first who gets there is the one who wins the customer. So the sooner you can implement the change, with the lowest possible risk and cost, it is better for the organization that you are part of. So that's another key point that is emphasized in this version of i.t.i.l. What would be an advantage for you as an individual? Why would it be useful for you to get certified in i.t.i.l? First of all, you can have a recognition of your skill in IT service management. Your certificate will be recognized worldwide, and it is a way of proving that you have the required skills and the required knowledge, that you at least understand the basic vocabulary involved with i.t.i.l. It will also help you better collaborate and better communicate with your colleagues, because when you have same vocabulary, it is easy to interact. It can also help you understand your role better in your organization. You can see the big picture and why exactly you are doing the task that you are doing right now. Learn how to focus on the most important topics of your job. It also gives you some good ideas about the improvement. In the future, how to improve the way you are doing things, and how to come up with the improvement that can be useful for the organization. Obviously, it all comes up with better career opportunities, employment prospects, and so on. Just as a key figure, remember that every year more than 250,000 people get certified in i.t.i.l Foundation. First of all, let's begin with the standards. As you already know, they usually contain mandatory requirements, which means they are very strict in nature. They have to be applied letter by letter, giving you very little option about how to customize, how to personalize them for your own organization. They are built on a very specific subjects, but they are very useful, as they can be used for the certifications. Actually, you certify your company with a certain level of maturity in particular activity you are doing, in a particular practice you are following. So that's the usefulness for the standards. On the other hand, the frameworks are the guidelines. They are not that strict. In the way they are built. In the way they are supposed to be implemented. What is the meaning of best practice? Why are the frameworks usually coming from the best practices? Best practice is just not a simple theory that someone just invented, but also be proven in practice. So other companies have tried this, and it worked. Of course, there is number 100% guarantee that it is going to work for you. But at least you are not reinventing the wheel or starting from the scratch. You are building from something. Something that has been proven to be working for other companies. They are non-prescriptive, which means you should not apply them letter by letter. They are more flexible, but instead you should try to customize them. First, you need to understand what works and what doesn't for you. Then you need to customize the framework and apply the things that are fit for you. So remember that ITIL is a framework. You should not use the word standard when you describe any methodology in framework. So these are the key points that I want to emphasize. Only individuals can obtain the ITIL certifications. If you are a company and you want to prove the level of maturity in IT service management, then you should apply for a standard certification. We have a standard which deals with that. It is called ISO 20000 certification. ISO 20000 is a standard for IT service management. Also, you should be very skeptic when you see different service provider trying to sell you different product or service, stating ITIL certified or ITIL compliant. Because that is really very difficult to prove, for the various reasons we have discussed already. Also, you should remember that there is not single way to implement ITIL. Because each company is different. So do not be surprised if you see two different companies both implementing ITIL, but in a slightly different way, with different particularities. It is perfectly normal, because each organization is different. Here I am going to give you some information about the i.t.i.l version for exam, and things to avoid, so that you can increase your chance for success. Remember, this comes from my experience as trainer. I have seen a lot of students attending this exam. And I can tell you that this is definitely not the most difficult exam in the industry. However, you should not treat it lightly, because it can be challenging. Especially, you should pay attention when you read the question, so that you make sure you understand the proper meaning of the question. Regarding the format, you should expect the multiple choice 40 question exam. You get 1 point for each correct answer that you give. You will not lose point if you give a wrong answer. So make sure you answer all the questions. In call cases, all the time only one of the 4 options is correct. So you will get 4 options. You will have to choose only one. So even if it is a multiple choice, and you have choose between A and B and C, or all of the above. So this is how the multiple choice works. But you always get to choose only one option. This is a closed book kind of exam. And it is supervised, and you cannot take it without supervision. In order to pass, you need to achieve a minimum of the 26 points. That is a 65% score. And the score is not relevant, because it's not even shown on the certificate. So what is important is that you pass that 26-point mark. Typically you have 60 minutes time. And for non-native English speakers, you get extra 15 minutes. So usually the time is not an issue with this exam. Nobody has issues with the time. Hence you shouldn't worry too much about the time. However, you should still manage your time correctly, because you can very easily get stuck in a very difficult question. And you can lose precious time. And get tired and then make mistakes on the easier question. One of the main things I have seen in my experience as a trainer, I have seen that most of the students tend to finish the exam in around 30 minutes. 25 to 40 minutes or something around there. The good news is that you can always change your mind and modify the answer. You can always go back on the previous questions and change the answers. But that's also a bad news because, from what I have seen, people tend to over-engineer. And if you start treating a question too many times, at some point you will start making all kind of connections. And all of the 4 options will seem to be correct. So my advice to you is, don't overreact with this. Don't go too far with this. I am not saying you shouldn't change any answer. Obviously. But try to change as little as possible. Because usually the first option is the right one. Gut instinct 1. So do not over-engineer. Do not forget this is still a foundation exam. So they do not expect you to make any complicated connections and apply some very sophisticated principles. You should stick with the basics and make sure you understood the theory, and you apply the theory. And you answer properly to the question. About the time, as I said in the previous slide. Manage your time. You have option to skip some of the questions. So for example, if you encounter a difficult one, if you read it and you cannot find an immediate answer, maybe it's a better idea to skip it and try to answer it later. Also, I prepared a very useful guideline for allocating the proper amount of time when training for this exam. Make sure you answer all the questions. Sometime when you are faced with very difficult ones, try to approach them by eliminating some of the answer. In most cases you can eliminate 1 or 2 options. And it's easier that way. You can see here there are a list of sections. And for each sections there is how many questions in the exam. And what is the exact percentage of the total amount of the questions. So you can see in this picture. A lot of questions are from the last section. Mainly from i.t.i.l. practices. So it makes sense to spend a lot of time trying to understand the details, things that are important for the practices. During the course I will try to emphasize on important things to know about the i.t.i.l. practices. Also, it makes sense to spend a lot of time in introduction in the first section. In the key concept, in the guiding principle. There are also important. As you can see that there are 10 questions in there. There are other areas such as service value system where, honestly, we can talk a lot for hours. There are a lot of things to explore there. But from an exam perspective it doesn't really make any sense to spend too much time on that. You will probably be faced with only 1 question in the exam. So it do not add too much value to add too much time on that. Also the value chain, it is a very vast topic. But I will try to emphasize the key points that you need to remember. So that you can best allocate your time understanding other areas which could be more important in the exam. With that said, we'll meet again on the next section with the discussion about the key concepts of i.t.i.l.